I agree with you completely. I'm absolutely a proponent of the freedom argument. I think that I should have the freedom to choose the foods that I consume and to make educated decisions about the safety of those foods and the benefits that they'll bring to my life and the life of my family. That's not the argument that's going to win us raw milk in Victoria. The arguments that will win us raw milk in Victoria are that Australia is behind global best practice, that every other country except Canada has procedures and rules in place whereby raw milk can be safely produced, sold and consumed by humans. We've got the argument that the rules already exist. Why do we have this system of laws that doesn't make sense in Australia? That you can buy raw goat's milk legally in 4 states, but you can't buy raw cow's milk in those states. Why in some states, is there a system for regulating raw goat's milk that we can't just apply for the other states? Why can we have raw cheese, but we can't have raw milk? Those are the points that will actually win us the attention of the policymakers and help us affect change. And I think the other argument that's really important for us is around new markets and support for small-scale farmers, because there is a concern that because of the position that Australia sits in our regional and global trade structures, that there is, as Mark was saying, this conglomeration, that there's actually a move away from small-scale localised production to great big companies that are absorbing farms and making farming an unsustainable and unproductive, or not particularly economical, not financially viable option for a lot of Australians. So I agree with you on the freedom point. I just think that we need to focus our arguments on the things that are going to get us the wins with the politicians, which is sort of the focus that we've taken in the lobbying pack and in the research pack as well. Absolutely, there are lots of points like that we can really target in our lobbying. When you do any political lobbying, you try and think about who's at the pinnacle of this decision making. And clearly Jane Garrett is someone who's taken these decisions. She's not actually responsible for that decision anymore. She's sort of let go of that area, and we're now being told that it's completely with the Health Ministry, aren't we? From the recent work that we've been doing. So what I was going to say is that there are 2 sort of types of lobbying that we can do. We can target individuals like Jane Garrett, the Minister for Agriculture, and so on, because they are ultimately going to make this decision. But they're not going to make it if they don't actually have pressure being put on them by the whole range of other MPs and people in their party and the constituencies. As Mark was saying, if there is a record in quite a number of MPs' offices that there are people regularly calling and writing and trying to get meetings about raw milk, it's an issue that we actually care about. It's not just a couple of letters, once or twice a year. It's substantive. That will create enough pressure that if we then start lobbying Jane Garrett, she'll also be getting lobbied by her colleagues and by other MPs. It's really heartening that in the moment in South Australia, as I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Greens MP, whose name I've forgotten, is introducing Mark. Everyone important is called Mark. Mark is introducing legislation for to legalise and regulate the sale of raw milk in South Australia. Sorry? It's all working for us. But the fact that that's happening in South Australia, the fact that a Greens member is willing to start that lobbying suggests a couple of things. Firstly, that it's an issue that the Greens are willing to work with, that it works with a lot of their other policies. Secondly, that he actually thinks it's got legs. They won't waste their time doing things that they don't actually think will get anywhere, especially not a small party, because they don't have the resources to waste on that. And again, that's something that we can really work with. If we can help create the momentum for small parties like the Greens to start building pressure on other parties, the major parties, and the decision makers, and if we can get the regulators, as Mark was saying, if we can work with the regulators to say there are great examples of how this is working elsewhere, all of that pressure can culminate pretty quickly, I think, in a change in the regulations. My take-home message today is very similar to Mark's. We're really close in Australia. This is not the biggest, worst battle that we're ever going to face. It might be different for our producers here, who I know are really, they're suffering from this a lot more than we are. But this is not the hardest thing to get through politics. There is momentum. There are a lot of factors that are working in our favour. It's just a matter of now getting the political pressure up to get our elected officials to recognise that there's votes in this. There's kudos if they actually work with this, and there's enough people calling for it. there's a huge amount of misinformation. So those simple stories, for her, being a paediatrician, having me, someone who, we went to high school together, she respects me as a person who thinks, she knows that I'm healthy now, she knows about my health issues in the past and how they've changed. Seeing that and seeing me drink a delicious glass of raw milk changed everything. Now she's talking to her colleagues about it. So even if you don't have a medical reason for it, those stories they're good enough, for sure.
As a consumer, what's our objective for meeting with you?
Your objective is to communicate your personal story,
Yeah.
to make them, because that's how you get their attention. You as a consumer, are you a scientist?
No.
So you don't have the authority that Ron has when he goes into the meetings as an expert in raw milk. And you're not a farmer, so you don't have the expertise that comes with producing raw milk. So your story is why you as a consumer and a voter in their electorate want to have access to this product. And then once you've got their attention with that story, which would probably only be, like I said, in the letter it's the first paragraph, in your meeting it might only be the first 2 minutes. It's not a huge part. You've got their attention, and then they say, so that's really interesting that it's had that effect on your life, that, you know, it's helped you with these medical issues, or you find it really delicious and your kids won't drink anything else. But what about that kid that died last year? And then your objective is to educate them on the safety of raw milk and how it's being done elsewhere. And like I said, it's not by speaking like Mark did with all of the statistics, it's about working with what you know from the research pack and what you're able to sort of bring to the table, which is that it's done in other countries, it's done effectively in other countries, it's been tested, that there are already regulations here that can help us do it, and so on. So it's that you then bring to the table. So when you leave the office, they've got a personal story and also evidence to back it up. And you've also brought with you your research pack and a summary, which is a 2-pager that the MP will read. And if they read that and they think, that's interesting, they'll pass on the research pack to their advisor and they'll say, can you look through this and tell me if you think there's anything in it? And then you call back a week later, or you get your friends to call back and make appointments or send letters once you've got their attention. So that's how the lobbying system really works. That's your objective. It's to get their attention and to be credible in your argument for why raw milk is something that should and can be safely regulated for human consumption in Victoria. The other argument that you can put to them is that there is no evidence yet that that death was connected, and that there was a 3-month gap between the consumption of raw milk and the child's death. And that there's evidence that's been reported in the mainstream media that that child was actually very, very sick, not at all related to the consumption of raw milk. Those are details that the MPs don't necessarily know because they didn't come out under the killer milk heading, which captured everyone's attention, and the Facebook rage that went along with the idea of the killer milk. So being very considered and just not engaging with the emotion of it, but putting some of the facts on the table and acknowledging that we don't yet have a coroner's court report and that we need to wait for that before we actually make any final conclusions about the contribution of raw milk to that child's death is really, really important. Swampy?
Maybe we should start to stress the connecting factor of Frankston Hospital's emergency department, because all these children went through there a lot more recently than they consumed the raw milk. The raw milk is largely irrelevant, but maybe now it's in the hands of the Department of Health. Maybe we put the finger right on them and say, hey guys, go and have a look at your hospital, because we've already had the nonsense here at Melton. They're already on the back foot. It's another good lobbying point.
Yep.
The other thing that I heard, not in all sources, but in a couple, was that the child had cancer.
Yes.
And when I researched HUS, chemo can create HUS. So if that child was receiving chemo, but you try and touch that one.
That's why I didn't mention cancer in what I just said.
But I'm
in what I
saying
said.
that the whole multiple possible causes for what the child died from, there is any number of possibilities, and there is no evidence that the raw milk was what was the particular cause.
Yeah, and then the cap on that is that the raw milk was consumed 3 months beforehand.
Right, yeah.
And what we know about raw milk is that in the cases, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, where it does cause illness, it does so fairly quickly. It's not 3 months down the track that it might cause that illness. Yeah. Someone else?
to get in contact with
So
them.
one of the things that we're going to be doing as part of the ongoing political strategy is highlighting some of these opportunities through the Facebook page and through the newsletter as well. Because I know that not everyone is completely aware of how our systems work and the particular cycles that we go through when there are these opportunities. So and we need you to be active in the lobbying. Keep an eye on what's going on the Facebook page, because we'll put out that information. Your estimates is now on, we need to get pressure, or it's going to be on in a couple of months, we need to get pressure on these particular people. One thing that we're also doing, and you'll see in the pack, is that there is a report back sheet, which is really essential to what we're doing. I don't have it in front of me, where it's a very simple table with, I think, 6 boxes for you to fill in. Who did you meet? How did it go? General impressions. What did you talk about? Was there an opportunity? Was there a point that they were interested in having more information on? As a community, if we all work together, we've actually got the capacity to do the follow-up that's required from any of these meetings as well. That if you're in a meeting with an MP who says, actually, that's really interesting, I'd love it if you could get me a copy of something that the Raw Milk Institute, has published around the standards that might be there. You may not know where to find that, but if you contact us, and if we're all working together as a community and communicating with each other, we can find ways of getting that information to those people. So keep an eye on the Facebook page, and it's also a place that we'll be putting the particular target points if there are particular opportunities for that lobbying.